Drew Pearson. He got it. Touchdown.
All right. Welcome in to Toilets and Titles, and now about them Cowboys, episode number 9. Today, we are discussing the 2023 Dallas Cowboys schedule, which was just released this past week, and it was kind of sprinkled out over a few days. There were some rumors, there was some buzz, and living in New York, I had a few people coming up to me, hey, I heard we're playing you week 1, and then a few other people who wear green said, hey, I heard we're playing you week 2, and all that came to pass. So the rumors were true, and we'll get into that in a few moments. But I'm going to introduce my co-host, my Cowboy co-host, Mr. Andrew Campey, at Andrew Campey on the Twitter. Camp was cooking.
Yeah, not much. It's always an interesting time of year to be able to watch the schedules released by the teams and see what they do. So it's I guess it's a good kind of bit of news, I guess, after all of the excitement of the draft is over. It's sort of nice to get a bit of information flowing again.
Yeah, I mean, so let's discuss feelings, right? So when the draft is coming up, before the draft, it's optimism. When the draft hits, it's excitement. When the schedule hits, for me, it's anxiety. I look at the schedule and I'm like, oh, this is a tough stretch. I don't like playing back-to-back Thursdays. I don't like this. I don't like that. This is when it starts to get real. I start to get a little nervous about what I expect from other teams and what I expect from the Cowboys. So yeah, that's been a little overwhelming the past few days. So
yeah, and I mean, what I find interesting about it is to a certain extent, you really know who they're going to be playing pretty because of the way that the schedules are all calculated. You kind of know when, who they're going to play. You just don't really know when, but it's still, when it comes out, it does sort of have a bit of shock if you start seeing those kind of names, and then you see them in an order, and you start realizing, who's going to be early, who's going to be late. And it's really kind of, as you said, anxiety is a really good word for when the schedule's released.
Yeah. And going and playing up in the northern part of New York in the middle of December, that's not something to be excited about. But I think our late stretch is pretty tough. But again, we will get into that. You can find me on the Twitter at Coach Sheps. You can find the network at Toilets and Titles. We have tons of content if you're unfamiliar with us. We got a Rams show now. We're working on a Jaguar show. We got a Giants show. We got fantasy shows. We got draft shows. And then we're affiliated with CFB Nation. They got everything from, underneath the NFL draft. All that college football stuff is going on over there. I do want to tell you, if you're watching this show and you're listening and you want to hear about this Cowboys schedule, stay tuned to the end, because after we discuss the schedule, we'll be able to give our predictions of whether or not this team makes the playoffs. So if you want to hear that, stay tuned to the end. If you're on Apple Podcasts, if you have Apple Podcasts, it'd be greatly appreciated if there was a 5-star Apple review. If you're on the YouTube, hit the like, subscribe, and comment. Comment with each game, too. Let us know, win or loss, what you think the score is, and we'll get back to you, because we'd be very interested in hearing about that. So I think we could dive right into this, man, because it's really schedule discussion. It's all out there. There's really no opinion on what the schedule is, because the schedule is given to us. The opinions really come up when we discuss what we think the outcome is. So this is the 4th hardest strength of schedule based on opponent, the 2022 win percentage of the opponents in 2023. And how do you feel about strength of schedule? To me, I really don't. It does induce anxiety, but it also, I don't think it means anything, because every year it changes. You could have the toughest, look at the NFC East last year. Everybody thought the NFC East was going to be garbage. And then you could say their strength of schedule was pretty weak for the most part because of how, bad most of the teams did. But they got into the playoffs and they did very well. So you could say what you want, but it changes every year. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the perfect example is week 2. You sit there and you think, okay, so the New York Jets are going to have a new quarterback this year. It's like sort of, if we were talking about, playing last year's New York Jets, then, okay, yep, no worries. I would love to have Zach Wilson and see what this defense could do to him. But it's obviously a bit of a different situation, sort of. And then, something else to sort of monitor is, so that obviously the Cowboys have got the Cardinals, which we'll talk about soon in week 3. And, Kyler Murray and seeing, how he sort of is going with his injury, when he'll be back, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of an interesting thing because so much can change from one season to another in the NFL. And then on top of that, you've got to understand, sometimes you get lucky and you get teams that are injured early and you play them and, it's a good run for you. And then the flip side is you can hit teams who are really hitting their stride at the end of the year. So you just don't know.
You mentioned week 2, like you were saying, like you really don't know. Think about week 2. I was thinking about week 2 last year. You really don't know what the Cowboys were. We played the Cincinnati Bengals with Cooper Rush and beat them. Like it's crazy. Like that was a big early season surprise for me. We beat a Super Bowl, a team that could be playing in Super Bowls. You know what I mean? They played in the Super Bowl the year prior. So yeah, man, it's really like, I feel like you don't know what your team is till like week 5. Everything prior to week 5 is pretty much up in the air. But that Jets game is going to be very interesting. The Cardinals game, all these games, I'm very excited about this schedule. So let's start with the New York Giants. Week 1, Camp. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's at the New York Giants, which I kind of feel like to a certain extent is a good thing. And I mean, it sort of feels like the narrative's changed a bit in the last couple of years. But for a while there, it seemed like the Cowboys were doing really well away from home and sort of seeming to struggle a bit more at home. But I feel like having an away game at the start of the year is not that a bad thing because I think everyone is so, by the time that week 1 rolls around, all the teams, they've gone through their mini camp, like their training camps, they've gone through so much off season and they've built up that expectation around week 1. So to me, it's kind of almost like a benefit of having a road game week 1 because I feel like everyone's kind of on level pegging anyway because everyone's so motivated. So I kind of hope that because it is away, I feel like, maybe the Cowboys will go in with a bit more sort of aggro and a bit more, at least mentally, backs to their wall and, come out with the win.
All right. So you got the Cowboys coming out with a win. I see what you're saying, and I agree with you, but I think Dak Prescott's won like the last 11 games against the New York Giants, and I keep waiting for that shoe to drop just because the law of probability. We're going in, they locked up Daniel Jones. You got to kind of expect Saquon Barkley is going to start off the season hot. They got a young rookie in Jalen Hyatt who might be a little bit explosive, and I think the Giants are going to be coming in hot. I do think the Cowboys are going to be the better team in 2023, but I think home opener, the Giants are due. We've lost the last 2 home openers to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Giants aren't on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers level, but I think that trend continues while the trend of us beating the Giants ends. I think we'll get back to that, and that's a little bit of teaser of my prediction later on. And but I think we start off the season with a loss, but then week 2 we have a home game against the New York Jets, Camp. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, look, I sort of think that the Jets are sort of everyone's kind of romantic pick to make some real noise in the playoffs. I feel like, once again, talking about, you don't really know until the schedule comes out. I feel like it's good to get them early because they might be like a bit of a Lions from last year where they get on a roll towards the end of the year. I think at the start of the season, definitely at least, I feel like they're probably going to be sort of like trying to figure it all out. So I'm hoping that the team will be 2-0 after the first 2 games.
All right. Everything you said, I agree with. They're going to start off the season. Breece Hall, I don't know what he's going to be like injury-wise. They do have Israel Abanikanda. They do have Zonovan Knight, but I don't think their offensive backfield is going to be as explosive as it will be towards the end of the season. They got Garrett Wilson. Outside him, they got Corey Davis. They got Alan Lazard. They got Randall Cobb. There's nobody that really scares me outside of Garrett Wilson on this offense and Aaron Rodgers. That offensive line, young, a little banged up, a little inexperienced. I think the Cowboys at home, I think they're going to have a field day. I think McCarthy lost to Rodgers last time he faced them with Dallas. I don't think they're going to let that happen again. Salah, kind of 49ers ties. I think the Cowboys will find a way to work that in as well, because the 49ers are a massive rival with them over the past few years. So I think the Cowboys, spirited, rolling, I think they beat the New York Jets in week 2, and then week 3 against the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I feel like week 3 and week 4 to me are really going to be interesting because, on paper to me, my gut says that they should win both games, but it just feels like both of those games are kind of, little sort of like speed bumps on the season. I feel like they really and we'll talk about it later, going into the later year, especially sort of like December, is going to be a tough part of the schedule. So they really need to do well early. And I think if they don't get over the hump in these early games, and they're probably going to struggle because they might drop one later that they really can't afford to. But yeah, look, my gut says, and on paper, I feel like that they go to Arizona and they win. But I wouldn't be surprised if they drop either the Arizona game or week 4 Patriots, which we'll speak about shortly.
So we're marking you down for a win or a loss here?
Yeah, win.
All right. I'm with you. New coach, Cowboys, they beat the Jets. They come in. I think they dominate the Cardinals. I think they have, again, because of what's coming up down the stretch or over the next few weeks, I think they dominate against the Cardinals, and we come in this is after 2 wins. We're super high going into week 4. We're loving it. We're world beaters. And then I think we might come back down to earth. But I think with Kyler Murray banged up, and who they're going to put in quarterback, Clayton Tune, he's a rookie. That offense doesn't really scare me. The defense is all right, but I think it's a good recipe these 2 weeks for the Cowboys to kind of tune up, lock in, and show that they could dominate. So week 4 versus the New England Patriots.
So yeah, as we've talked about, on paper, the Cowboys should be winning this game, but it does sort of scare me a bit. I'm gonna say they're gonna have a win, which means that going on so far they're 4-0 now. If you force me to put a bet on it, I don't think I would be having them 4-0 at this stage. I think that would be 3-1. But I'm struggling to figure out where that loss is. I suspect week 3 and week 4 are going to be the tough games, but I as I sort of mentioned, I'm pretty confident the first couple of games. I feel like the Cowboys are going to be sort of switched on, and then if they can get past 3 and 4, then they're probably really flying by this point.
Yeah, so I think the New England Patriots for me is a win as well. I love Bill. I think the defense is going to be good. I think they'll probably hold us to somewhere between 20 and 24 points. But this will be a game where we really show off that interior rush defense, right? This is, I think, Maisie Smith. We're going to see him, or Mozzie Smith. We're going to see him step up in this one because that's what the Patriots like to do. They're going to want to run the football. Ramondre Stevenson's going to want to go off. If the Cowboys can contain this New England rushing attack, which I think they ultimately will do, I think they're going to show off their new toy, their new weapon. I think the Cowboys win this game. So I think the Cowboys now, you have them 4-0. I have them 3-1, but things get real week 5 against the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. So go ahead, Cam.
Yeah, look, it's hard to see them winning just on recent history. I feel like I'm not sure they've cracked the code yet. As we've sort of mentioned previously on other shows, it sort of seems like they're moving away from being offensively dominated to being defensively dominated. So it's obviously going to change the storyline a bit as far as how the Cowboys go. But at this stage, you've got to feel like, San Francisco is going to win that game.
I agree. I have this as a loss for the Cowboys as well. Also, week 5, they have guys like Kittle, McCaffrey, Debo, who usually get a little bit banged up, but I expect them to be fully healthy at this point. And then, for their sake, probably healthy around the playoffs. But I think kind of after this week, you're going to start to see the injuries mount up for the San Francisco 49ers. So we're going to play a healthy 49ers. We're going to play them in San Francisco. But I do think we are going to play them well. I think this is the type of game where it's close. we have our moments where we're dominating, we're playing well, and then they obviously have their moments. But I think we're going to come out of this game feeling good about ourselves, kind of like how the switch flipped from how we played Tampa the opening game week 1 of 2 years ago, and then how we came back and did it last year. We still lost, but it was much closer. And I think that led to us beating them in the playoffs because we kind of figured it out. We proved to ourselves we can beat them. I think we're going to have a similar situation with the San Francisco 49ers. But then we stay in California. I'll be interested to see if we go back to Dallas or if we stay out there. We'll probably go back to Dallas. And we play the LA Chargers. Kellen Moore, revenge game.
Yes.
So what are you thinking?
Yeah, look, I just, there's something about this game when I look at it, I just feel like it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be a frustrating game from a Cowboys point of view. I just feel like it's going to be a loss, and I feel like it's going to be one of those kinds of games where, you know, the Cowboys are probably, you know, trailing all day. They probably shouldn't be, but it's just one of those things that they're just not clicking right. It just has all those kind of hallmarks for me. And then I just feel like the Chargers just got too much firepower to be able to sort of play that kind of game. So it'll be interesting to see, as you said, whether or not it's a revenge game. I'm not sure, but yeah, look, it's quite interesting that, you know, the Cowboys go at San Francisco, at LA, and then they have the Rams after the bye. So they go LA, but, you know, 2 games in LA, 1 back in Dallas. So it's kind of a weird quirk of the schedule this year.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be coming off an emotional high against the 49ers where we lose. So it might be a little bit of a letdown, actually, because we played well, but the Cowboys are going to be feeling well. Fans are going to be feeling well. We're going to think that that's this team. The Cowboys are a team that even though they lost, they're dominant. They played well. They're worthy of being one of the top teams in the NFL. And then I think they're going to come out and lose to the Chargers. And we're going to go into the bye, in my case, 3-3, a little disappointed, uncertain about who we are, uncertain about what our future holds. And there's going to be questions about Mike McCarthy. You know, what is he? Whatever the losses besides the Giants, which I think, again, it's just probability. We beat them so many times in a row. That's why I think we lose week 1, you know. But then with the 49ers and the Chargers, I don't think, you know, on paper, those aren't bad losses, right? But there will be questions, you know, going into the bye, and the future will be uncertain. I just think, you know, Kellen Moore, Justin Herbert, they got weapons out there. You know, I love the wide receiver corps. Then you bring in Quentin Johnson, who can stretch the field, Austin Eckler. You know, you still got Joey Bosa, who's a stud. You still got Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr. Chargers are one of the best teams in the league on paper. You know, let's see, you know, in the playoffs, they kind of pooped the bed, and Trevor Lawrence kind of, you know, just had a monster half. So I'm going into the bye week 3. So I'm sorry, week 3, 3-3. Week 7 is the bye. We're going to move on, but I want to let everybody know, if you want to support the show, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/toilets to titles. I think we have 4 or 5 tiers with tons of additional content that and especially going into the NFL season, fantasy football season, rookie draft season, redraft season, all that stuff. That's when you want to link up with us, because we're going to help you throughout that entire process. And we also have a Gilded Chat that's free to enter. We have tiered based services in there from our Patreon, so we can kind of separate it all by channels, but we do have general discussion in there. We have our Frankenstein talk, fantasy talk. So if you want to get in there, reach out to me on Twitter at Coach Sheps, and I will bring you into the Gilded Chat, and you'll be a member of the T2T title tribe. So week 8, LA Rams camp at home. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I feel like, you know, I feel like they sold their soul for the Super Bowl. And I think, if you're honest, I think 32 teams would do that, you know, in a heartbeat. But it just feels to me like the Cowboys are going to, you know, beat the pants off the Rams this year. It just feels like they're just in transition, and they're a bit of, you know, I feel like sort of by week 8, I think McVay is going to be sitting there thinking about, why did I, you know, he was talking about having that year off and whatever, and I've been arguing about it. I think by week 8, he's going to be thinking, why did I do this to myself again? I feel like that's going to be a game that the Cowboys are going to put their foot down.
Yeah, and it's after a bye, after being 3-3, after a lot of questions about Mike McCarthy. I think the Cowboys are going to score a lot of points in offense, and I think their defense is going to absolutely dominate this one. I'm still, you know, Cooper Kupp's still a dude, but he's coming off an injury, so it'll be interesting to see what the difference with him is. I don't believe in Cam Akers. I don't believe in that backfield. That offense is in trouble. Matthew Stafford is a little banged up. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in conversations next year for a top selection, if they still even have their first round pick. I don't know. This isn't Ramsaholic. You'll have to ask Shay that. All right, his shows are Wednesdays. But I think that there's a possibility, and there's a kid in California, Caleb Williams, who they might be interested in drafting. And we talk more about him on the clock on Thursday. So you can hear that there. All right, week 9 at Philadelphia. This one, tough one. Thoughts?
Yeah, look, as you said, I think it'll be going into the bye. I think there'll be a lot of conversation depending on what the Cowboys' record is. If it is that kind of 4-2, 3-3, I feel like there'll be a lot of discussion. As we mentioned, I feel like they come out at the against the Rams and they put a number on them, and then it just feels like to me that then they go into Philly and there's the drop off, and it's just I feel like Philly is going to be tough with that defense. They got the numbers on offense. I just feel like the Cowboys. I worry that we had those games last year where we didn't start well, and I feel like if we have one of those, especially in Philly, it's just going to make for a nightmare day, and it's hard to see the Cowboys getting a win in that one.
Yeah, so you got them as a loss. I have them as a loss as well, but I do think we play well. That I think we might have a few stinkers here and there because the Cowboys generally do that. But I think against Philadelphia, I think this team is starting to change as far as attitude goes. I love the attitude of this defense with Jaron Kearse, with Micah Parsons, bring in a run stuffer who's going to just clog up the middle and just be, big trash can full of dirt, as Brian Broda says. Mozzie Smith, the linebacker core is getting a little better. You bring in a veteran like Stephon Gilmore. I think everyone's going to have this game, 49ers game and this game circled on the calendar. Unfortunately, both of them are losses, but I think they're going to be up for this one. I think they're going to show Philadelphia that they're right there with them, even though at this point I have them 4-4, and I believe you have them 5-3. So yours, on your end, it's a little better. My end, they're still a 500 team, but I think they're showing the NFL that they're right there. And then the next week, they have the New York Giants at home.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be penciling that in as a win. So it's always hard to get 2 wins against a division rival. But I just feel like coming off a loss at Philly, I feel like they're going to be really sort of like raring to go sometime. I feel like my concern with sort of McCarthy in general has been sort of that motivation hasn't seemed to be there. And so sometimes you need some, almost artificial motivation from elsewhere. And I think, if they do have that loss to Philly, I think it really sort of, it gets into the players' minds of, hang on, who are we? We're better than this. And I feel like they come out and they show the Giants that.
These next 3 games, I think this stretch, week 10 through week 12, is the most important stretch of the season. They need to be at their best from week 10 through week 12. They have to be. They cannot afford to have any mishaps. I have them beating the Giants. We lost to them earlier, back on track, this time at home. And I think coming off of playing the Philadelphia Eagles and playing them well and playing them close, I think this is a game where by the end of the half, where the Cowboys won this one. And then this is also a game where in the fourth quarter gets a little closer and everybody thinks it was a close game. But I think this is a game that wasn't close, until what I'm talking about. The Cowboys usually play in games like that where, the cardiac Cowboys, but we dominate. And then next week we play at Carolina. So Camp, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be, I think this will hopefully be from a Cowboys point of view, we've got a fair bit of time behind our defense now. We're going to a team who's going to have a rookie quarterback starting. They're not exactly a well-rounded team yet. They've got a few holes that they need to fill. So I'm feeling a win here.
Agreed. I agree. I have them as a win too. I think that they have to, in the past, we've had moments where we make rookie quarterbacks. Like look what happened with Sam Howell last year. He beat us at the end of the season. So I'm a little nervous, but I think the Cowboys, they should handle business against the Carolina Panthers. This is, again, a tough stretch. They're going to know that. They have some really serious, tough opponents coming down. They cannot afford to lose a game against the Carolina Panthers here. I have them as a win. And then Thanksgiving, I hate Thanksgiving games. I'm a Cowboys fan who does not enjoy them. I especially living in New York, where I sit down for Thanksgiving and everybody roots against the Cowboys regardless. Last year was tough because they played the Giants. Me and my son, he wasn't feeling well, so we left and we went home. So we watched the game together, and it's actually so much more enjoyable just being there with him, watching the game. But Thanksgiving, Week 12, Washington Commanders.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned on our sort of draft show the other week, like, for them to put so much sort of confidence in, Archer mid-round quarterback is such an interesting thing to me, because it feels like that's really their biggest kind of weakness. But yeah, look, I'm 50-50 on this game, because I just feel like the Cowboys are the better team. But, as we sort of mentioned earlier, like, division games are always tough. And, to a certain extent, I feel like, they go into games and they play at each other's level. So against the against the Eagles, sorry, I think it'll be like a tough game and both teams will play well. And then when it comes to this game, I don't see, Washington being really good this year, but I feel like the Cowboys will play down to their level. And, I'm not sure whether or not it's going to be a win or a loss. I think for sake of argument here, I'll say it's a win. But it's, all week, I think there'll be no confidence from my side going in that game.
Yeah. Being Thanksgiving, Washington's going to be up for it. The Cowboys usually come out really, really slow. They're going to need to keep this one close. They might be able to, because the quarterback on Washington is not somebody who I'm going to be super confident in. And it's going to be unlike the Giants game, where by the first half, we knew the Cowboys won. It might be by the first half, we're thinking the Cowboys lost. But I think the Cowboys ultimately pull this one out, because I do think they are more talented. I think the coaching staff is better. I just think, it's gonna take them a bit, but they're gonna end up pulling this one out. So this important stretch, you have them 3-0, I have them 3-0. If that happens in season, that'll be very huge for this roster, because these next few games are tough. It gets very tough. Luckily, Week 13, we play Seattle Seahawks at home. All right. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, look, it's going to be a tough game. I mean, realistically, this is the hardest stretch, isn't it, for the whole year? I mean, from this game onwards, for the next sort of 4 games, you could almost see them going 0-4, really. Obviously, we hope that's not the case. I can just see this not going their way. They've got a pretty decent offense. I mean, I think we all sort of last year were waiting for the wheels to fall off Geno Smith, and it didn't really happen. So whether or not that happens this year or not, I guess we will definitely know by week 13. But it just feels like to me that this is a game that I think. My biggest concern is it's a game that's going to be tough, but at the same time, I worry that the Cowboys might be looking forward to the next 3 weeks after it, so they might not be focused on it. So I can see a loss here.
I could see that too. This is going to have to be a Tony Pollard game. I think this game, the way the defenses are structured, I think Geno's going to be limited. I think Dak's going to be limited. It's going to be Kenneth and Charbonnet versus Pollard, Deuce, Ronald Jones, and anybody else that the Cowboys might bring in. It's going to come down to rushing offensive line and rushing defense. And I wanted to say win at the start. You said loss, but I've had a few borderlines that I've given to the opponent, and I'm going to give the Cowboys the win here. I think the Cowboys at home, Dan Quinn versus old team, still Geno Smith. I do think Dak Prescott is more talented. The Seattle Seahawks are very talented at wide receiver, but I'm hoping maybe they chuck a few balls they shouldn't. And this secondary gets a few interceptions that lead to us running the football, taking some time off the clock, getting in the end zone and icing this thing. So next week, week 14 versus Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, look, once again, it's going to be a tough game, isn't it? I'm putting them down for a loss here. I hope that they're going to at least get one game from the Eagles, but look, it's going to be tough. They're a really good-looking side at the moment. So, I feel like at this stage it's going to be a loss, and it's going to put the Cowboys in a interesting position for how they go for the rest of the season.
I think the Cowboys put all their eggs in this basket. I think this is the best game of the season from this Cowboys team. I think they get a win at home and they're ready. Like that game in week 9 showed them that they could beat this Eagles roster. I think they do everything right in this one. And they beat the Philadelphia Eagles. All right. Then week 15 against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, look, this is a game that I wish wasn't at Buffalo. I can see it being a crummy kind of game. I feel like it's a loss. I feel like it's a game that you're probably going to need to do everything right, and I just don't see that the Cowboys, being that kind of unit. I mean, you hope that the defense is going to be able to save the day, but it feels like there's going to be something, whether or not it's a punt block or, something like that. I feel like there's going to be something coming into that game going out of that game that we're going to be talking about, something, whether or not it's special teams or it's a fumble at the wrong time, something like that.
Or we go up like 14 with 10 minutes left and Josh Allen scores 2 touchdowns, puts them in field goal range with 30 seconds left. I think this is a loss as well. I think the Cowboys are going to be emotionally hungover after beating the Philadelphia Eagles and being so invested in beating the Philadelphia Eagles and then having to go up to Buffalo in December, cold weather game after, a tough stretch playing the Seahawks, who are a physical team, the Eagles, who are a physical team, and the Bills, who can be a physical team. And then week 16, they head from Buffalo to Miami. So a little bit different down there. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, so at the start of the year, I said, I picked them to go 4-0, and I, if I was a betting man, I'd say they were 3-1. I feel here the Cowboys after this stretch of games will be 3-1 or 1-3 or 2-2. It's just hard to see where that win's coming from. So I'll pencil them in for a win here against the Dolphins, but I feel like it's going to be a tough game. It's going to come down to the last play, I feel.
Yeah. I think this game on paper be very, very exciting, but I think the Cowboys are a better team than the Miami Dolphins. I do. And after losing to Buffalo, this is probably a very important game where they could clinch a playoff spot. I'm not sure how because me and Cam, full disclosure, we didn't do wins and losses and discuss it before the show. Like we're giving you our opinion and each other our opinion, like live on air. So I'm not sure if it works out numerically, but I do think this is a game where the Cowboys could clinch a playoff spot. I think the Cowboys win this one. And then the next 2 weeks, it'd be a little questionable. So what do you have next week versus the Detroit Lions?
Yeah, well, as you said, we haven't sort of gone through and tallied up our numbers yet, but I think the line for the Cowboys is 9.5. So
okay,
it'll be interesting because I feel like you and I are both going to come in around that number. Whether or not we're above or below will be interesting. But yeah, look, the Lions is an interesting team, isn't it? It's just sort of one of those things where everyone's sort of looking at what they did last year and thinking that they are going to, I mean, when you won as many games as they did at the end of last year, you can't really say elite, but it does feel like people are thinking that they're going to be, not only make the playoffs, but, possibly make some noise in the playoffs. However, I feel like the Cowboys are still the better team. I feel like, Detroit sort of still has that kind of old style mentality. So I feel like if it becomes a shootout, I feel like the Cowboys are going to be better positioned for that. So yeah, I'm expecting that the Cowboys will probably, get the touchdowns when it matters in that game.
All right. So I have this game as a loss. I think that Detroit, scrappy, young, high flying, nothing to lose, and they're probably going to be playing for their playoff lives as well. So this is possibly a game that we might see again. If I think Detroit probably wins their division, I think it's either between them or the Vikings, but I think there's a good chance Detroit Lions win that division. But I think we end up seeing Detroit somehow week 1. So pencil that in. I have the Cowboys as a playoff team, and they're playing Detroit in the playoffs. And that's a tough game tough team to face because there's going to be a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of young firepower, and a young coach who is probably going to have the team up and going. So I have this as a loss. All right, week 17, and then week 18, the final week of the season versus Washington Commanders.
Yeah, look, as I sort of mentioned earlier, I feel like the Cowboys are the better team than Washington, but it just seems to be, as I said, we sort of the Cowboys tend to play down to their level. So I worry that we might have a same situation that we had last year and have a loss here. So I'm going to say it's a loss. I feel like it's going to be a lousy way to end the year, and I'll be interested to see how it affects the final tally. But yeah, I feel like it's just, on paper the Cowboys should win, but yeah, gut tells me no.
Yeah, last year we lost to the Commanders to end the season. This year I just don't see that happening. Even if we're in the playoffs, I just think we could still manage, if we're 11-6, which spoiler alert, I just tallied up my numbers. Let's say that Philly's close to that. I think this game might end up being meaningful, whether it's for seeding, whether it's for having a home game at all in the playoffs. I think it's our record is close enough. It's not dominant. It's not awful that this game will matter. I think week 18 for the Dallas Cowboys is going to matter. If it matters, they beat the Washington Commanders. And there's also a good chance, you never know with the Commanders. They're falling apart by week 18. Okay? That's a very possible outcome for the Washington Commanders. So my tally, if you want to double check yours just to make sure, I have it on the doc, but I think I did your numbers correctly. My tally is 11-6. So that has the Cowboys as a playoff team. It can't be, I believe yours is 10-7.
Yep, that looks correct.
And you started out with them 4-0. So I thought you were the optimist. It turns out I am the optimist. So 10-7, are they getting in?
Yeah, look, I feel like with that extra position in the playoffs, I feel like 10-6, 10-7 is probably going to be kind of a number. It's going to be close, but I could see them sneaking in. But yeah, like in a way, it's been fun to go through and do this because, as you said, the schedule brings some anxiety, and I've been quite pessimistic on the stretch in December for the Cowboys, but still managed to get them to 10-7. So you look at it and say, well, if luck goes their way, then they could be quite easily 11, 12 wins. So maybe the schedule's not as bad as I thought.
Yeah, or maybe we're just optimists. Maybe we got blue tinted glasses on. But everybody, we appreciate you checking out this show. If you're listening on Sunday, if you're a mother, happy Mother's Day. If you have a mother that's close to you, happy Mother's Day to her from the Toilets to Titles Network. Remember to tune in, lock in, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. We have tons of content throughout the week. We're almost at a show a day right now. We're also on all audio platforms, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, anywhere you think you could hear us, you can hear us. You don't have to just see us. If you're sick and tired of our faces, just download one of those apps. You can listen to us in the car, and we can help you get to and from wherever you're headed to. So everybody, me and Campey, who you can find on Twitter at Andrew Campey, myself at Coach